All right, wish us luck, everybody. We're gonna try doing this. We got 3 different mics, one for each person. So we're gonna get started now. Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thanks for coming out or zooming in. We have made it to the end of a very weird year. When we started out here in August, it was similar setup, and it was so hot we had to I brought water because I was worried people would pass out. And now I'm just worried about the wind blowing all the chairs away, but I think we'll be okay. So anyways, appreciate it. This was the 20th anniversary season of the Final Thursday reading series. This is the last event of the season. Not all went as planned, but everything went one way or another, whether we were doing live events or doing events only on Zoom, or in the case of this one, trying to do what I think this is closer to the new normal. Like almost all live events like this that we're doing will probably be put on Zoom or YouTube or something like that. At least that's that's what I'm thinking is going to be happening going forward. Both have some advantages. So before I get started, I just want to announce for those of you that are here in Cedar Falls that on Thursday, May 6th at 6 p.m. on this very location with slightly more sound equipment, but the Blue 2 Band, which features Bob Dorr, they'll be giving a show here. That'll be Thursday, May 6th at 6 p.m. All right, and I was trying to think, well, here I am going to be working with a mathematician and an astronomer tonight. Like, what would be the right thing for me to read? And then I remembered this one piece that I'd written a while ago. And I did get to read this one time when I was giving a talk at Truman State down in Missouri. And they had me give this talk and was actually it's like, I mean, they were using it as an auditorium, but it was a planetarium. So like, as I was getting ready, I could see that, it's got the round ceiling, and they explained to me that, you can make all the stars come out. I thought, wow, that's great. I got to make some use of this. And like, I've got this one story I read that kind of takes, it's kind of like from the perspective of an alien, and, he's kind of wearing a space helmet. And then the guy points next to me where there's actually a space helmet. And I was like, oh, I'm totally going with this. So when I gave the reading, I put on a space helmet, and then as I started reading, the lights went down and the stars came up. Now, our production budget is not that high tonight, so there will be no changes in the background, but you'll envision me putting on a helmet instead of the hat. So, all right, this is called Atmosphere. I'll never get used to the space helmet. 3, maybe 4 times a day, I try to scratch my nose or rub an itch on my lower left eye, and bam, I whack a hand right on the shell of my helmet. All 3 of my hands have bruises now. But since there's hardly any cyanide in the atmosphere, I'd be dead in seconds if I tried to breathe the oxygen on this planet. So I'll have to put up with this helmet as long as we stay here on Earth. But I have to say, I hope it won't be too long. I mean, this planet has got to be the most inconvenient place in the universe. I mean, half the day there's blinding light. Then when it gets dark, I mean, it's just dark. There's hardly any visible gas in the atmosphere, no chemical haze like there would be on a normal planet. And the days happen so fast that as soon as I have the visor on my helmet adjusted for the light, I have to readjust it for the dark. And it's stuff like that just drives me crazy about this planet. I mean, by the time I've gotten to really know one of the natives, I mean, she ups and dies and is replaced by her child or her grandchild. And I'm like, what the hell? Why didn't anyone tell me the grandmother was dead? And they say it happened during one of my dormant cycles, like that is somehow my fault. Well, apparently my dormant cycles match up pretty close to the season they call summer, where they all swear the weather's warmer and the foliage is more vibrant. I mean, they've even shown me pictures of this summer, but the thing comes and goes so fast. I don't have much faith in it. I'm supposed to be impressed by the fact that summer here is hot, even though my planet has an average temperature variation of 500 degrees centigrade. I mean, they keep thinking I'm going to be shocked by the height of their mountains or the strength of their storms. And it's all I can do not to roll my eyes at them. Well, at least my upper tier of eyes. And these natives, they can't imagine the extremes of my home world. I mean, volcanoes rise higher than can be seen. We have oceans larger than all of this planet Earth. There are enormous creatures that only survive where I come from because they have symbiotic relationships with microscopic bacteria. But I will say one thing. If I had to invent an atmosphere from scratch, I might go with oxygen, like they have here. No, I know what you're thinking. Cyanide is superior in so many ways. And of course, that's true. But it is amazing how many different forms of life can breathe oxygen. I can't even keep track of them all. And even with all that the dominant species here is doing to eliminate rivals, the new life forms, I mean, they just keep coming. It's hard to explain how fast everything happens here. Civilizations rise and fall. Species come into existence and go extinct. Shifting tectonic plates rearrange the continents. I mean, things are moving all the time. It's impossible to keep up with. I mean, at a certain point, you just have to give yourself up to the atmosphere and breathe it all in. Well, yeah, so to speak. All right. All right, thank you all. Now on Zoom, you're supposed to use the little clapping icon. Come on, get your emojis right. Okay. All right then. So you'll see 3 mics here. We might have to do a little shifting of the camera to make sure it's on the right one. But next up will be Thomas Hawkey, who's an astronomer and author of the forthcoming America's First Eclipse: Chasers, Stories of Science, Planet Vulcan, Quicksand, and the Railroad Boom. All right, come on up.
There were 525,600 minutes in the year 1869. This is the story of 3 of them. I was channeling a total eclipse of the sun. It was the afternoon of 7th August 2019. I stood across the street from what was once the location of J.H. Stanley's retail store in downtown Cedar Falls, Iowa, my hometown. In a community where storefronts often exhibit plaques claiming provenance of their antiquity and ownership over the years, Stanley's shop is not among them.
You're looking right there.
It has not survived as brick and mortar replaced wood. There were not many stores in 1869, even though through it was the terminus of the Illinois Central Railroad. The mill town only recently had surpassed 1,000 citizens. It had not been long since so little mail arrived in Cedar Falls that the postmaster carried letters under his hat and delivered them to addressees when he saw them on the street. Stanley was a jeweler. That season, the hot items were filters with which to peep at the sun. Stanley was exceptional in that he was a townie in a time when almost everybody lived on the farm. Exactly 150 years before I took my station at the northeast corner of Main and 2nd Streets, Stanley took a break from selling his goods to step outside in order to get a better view of something unusual. He looked up towards the southwest. Perhaps the facing lot was vacant. Perhaps the wooden buildings of the day were not tall enough to obscure the view of many objects in the sky. With no Cedar Falls Fire Department, Stanley's shop would burn to the ground 2 years later. It helped that it was early afternoon in the summer. The sun was high. Here he waited to watch a total solar eclipse. While no white man, woman, or child had seen such a thing in Iowa before, he'd read about it in the newspaper. Stanley had learned that astronomers wished for the local duration of such an event, especially from towns just like Cedar Falls, where the latitude and longitude were approximately known, and the total eclipse was to be brief. My neighbor in space, if not time, may not have understood the particulars of why such a measurement was coveted. However, for the moment, we can guess that he wished to be part of the emerging culture of science in the latter 19th century. Stanley had a white-faced watch accurate to half a second. In my mind, it was pulled from a vest pocket. The weather was uncharacteristically cool for August, but still obviated the need for his overcoat. Earlier, the watch had been set by use of telegraph signals transmitted by an operator consulting a master clock located in the big city to the east, Dubuque. He also held a piece of colored glass. Stanley had with him a lantern, while still long before the summer's late sunset. It was about to get dark. Stanley had memorized the 2 solar eclipse contacts corresponding to the onset of total obscuration of the sun by the moon and its end. He would record these times for posterity shortly. In between, he beheld the marvel taking place above. In an era when public life took place outdoors more than it does today, passersby stopped to take a look too. It was probably quiet, except perhaps for the noise associated with the construction of the new stone railroad depot nearby, the only building Stanley would recognize today. When the rare spectacle was over, they might have wondered how such a show, one that likely would become a lifelong memory, could have taken place so quickly. Had they held their breaths? Prior to 2017, the last total eclipse of the sun to pass over the United States took place in 1991. The state was Hawaii. I flew to the Big Island to see it, thinking that if I was clouded out, the worst case scenario had me stuck in Hawaii. No downside there. The result was an unexpected large dose of endorphins. I was hooked. Later, I would travel to Antigua, Argentina, Chile, Mongolia, Romania, Turkey, and Missouri, just for the chance of seeing another total eclipse. Usually, I dodged rain and was successful. I cannot put into words why I made these peregrinations. I suspect the answer is different for every eclipse junkie. If you saw the 2017 solar eclipse, which crossed the mainland coast to coast, you know what I'm talking about. 215 million people, 88% of all American adults, did so in person or electronically. The rest of you will not have long to wait. By great coincidence, another transcontinental total solar eclipse will occur in 2024. In 2017, historian Stephen Ruskin deemed the total solar eclipse of 28 July 1878 America's first great eclipse. In his book, he does mention the total eclipse of 1869, but if 1878 was great, then 1869 was at least by definition first. For the first time in the United States, scientists and tourists made scrupulously organized pilgrimage to see this awesome prenatural pageant in the sky. Indeed, it was the earliest total eclipse of the sun where the zone of totality spanned the North American continent, again, of which there is record. The 1878 total eclipse path left land at the Gulf of Mexico and never crossed the Appalachians. It missed the most populated portion of the United States altogether. More significantly, the 1869 solar eclipse, Milo, had all the hallmarks of a contemporary eclipse: professional expeditions to the zone of totality, scientific results, public enthusiasm, and hucksters ready to exploit the event. The total solar eclipse of 7 August 1869 is a vivid example of the manner in which events at the time of great importance fade in memory with the decades. They meld into a faint and obscure background replaced by interest in more recent affairs. Who remembers when War and Peace was published? 1869. The fanfare and excitement about the total eclipse that year were enormous at the time. Someone even wrote a melody about it. Yet ask North Americans today what they know about anything that took place in the 1860s. Well, there was the Civil War and Reconstruction, of course. Known of, but less often spoken about, is the murderous rampage of the Ku Klux Klan. The presidencies of Abraham Lincoln and Ulysses Grant, perhaps the impeachment of Andrew Johnson, the Pony Express. But the percentage who can give any other answer falls into the single digit category. Total eclipses of the sun have passed over North America since plate tectonics formed the continent. Immigrants from Asia doubtlessly saw them. However, we have no documentation of these events. The fledgling United States experienced several total eclipses of the sun, beginning while its Revolutionary War still waged. In 1780, founding father John Hancock wrote to the opposing commander on behalf of Harvard professor Samuel Williams, the first astronomer in the United States. Might the academic be given right of passage across battle lines to observe the total eclipse? It was to be visible from Maine, then occupied by the British. This was a more genteel time. Permission was given. It is too bad that Williams missed the totality. He experienced only a partial solar eclipse from where he camped on Penobscot Bay. Williams said that the current theory of lunar motion, based upon which he predicted the umbral path, was wrong, or his math was off. Alternately, he just screwed up his math. It must have irked Williams that the total eclipse was observed successfully by Harvard graduate and Tory John Clark from Canada. The shadow of the moon moved across New Spain all the way to Massachusetts. It was 6 June, 1806. Though not on the path of totality, Meriwether Lewis and John Clark observed a partial solar eclipse as they returned home from their historic expedition to the West Coast. Of the total eclipse, the famous American author James Cooper wrote in his circa 1831 essay, The Eclipse, "I shall only say that I have passed a varied and eventful life, that it has been my fortune to see earth, heavens, and ocean, and man in most of these aspects. But never have I beheld any spectacle which so plainly manifested the majesty of the Creator, or so forcibly taught the lesson of humanity to man, as a total eclipse of the sun." The total eclipses of 1803 and 1825 both crossed Florida, but that peninsula did not belong to the United States at the time. The total eclipse of 1860 began near the Washington Territory, but never made it as far southeast as Idaho. The total eclipse of 30 November 1834 began in British America, Canada, entered the United States proper at Missouri, and ended in South Carolina. However, those were the times of another United States, a parochial country hugging the eastern seaboard. These eclipses were observed by astronomers only at the terminus. The first total eclipse of the sun over the United States as we know it, now continent-spanning actor on the international stage, took place on 7 August 1869. 1869. Folk were singing "A Little Brown Jug." Uncle Sam appeared in art. Something called the phenakistoscope, a moving picture projector, was patented. Root beer, a new game called football was first played between two college teams. Rutgers beat Princeton 6-4. The path of our total solar eclipse began in far Siberia near the Chinese border, swept over the Bering Sea at 100 kilometers per minute in the newly purchased American Department of Alaska, and continued across Western British America. It crossed the United States border into the Montana Territory and passed through the Dakota Territory before entering the states of Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Virginia, the far western tip, Tennessee, the far eastern tip, and North Carolina. It ended in the Caribbean Sea near Bermuda. But the state through which the total eclipse path made a nearly perfect diagonal, assuring that more people in this state were on the track or could easily get to it than any other, was Iowa. More observing stations were established in Iowa than any other state. A virtual who's who of American astronomy was in attendance. Fast forward yet again. On 28 June 2004, the United States Naval Observatory docked at my landlocked doorstep. It did so in the person of Alan Fiala, the United States government's eclipse expert. Did I know that my very neighborhood had played a role in the 1869 total eclipse of the sun? I did not. I had then never heard of the 7 August 1869 total eclipse of the sun. Fiala's goal was to use the total eclipse shadow size from long ago to determine if the sun's physical diameter was changing. Though confined at the time to a wheelchair by childhood polio, Fiala had motored across the states of Kentucky, Illinois, and Iowa in his quest. In Iowa, he had visited Marion, Mechanicsville, Stanwood, Red Oak. Now he was in Cedar Falls. As it happened, Cedar Falls was on the very edge of the 1869 total eclipse path's northern limit. With observers placed about town, whether or not an individual one saw the eclipse as total or not determined the exact edge of the moon's umbra. Now Fiala wished to pin down the critical geographical coordinates of those observers using the new navigational technique of the global positioning system. Sure, why not? The result was an entertaining day driving about town in search of the exact spots from which path edge timings had been made. It was not a simple undertaking. The geographical descriptions from 1869 no longer fit the layout of this now much larger modern Midwestern city. No less than 4 different observing stations were occupied by the enthusiastic citizens of 1869 Cedar Falls, thus setting a record for response to government request for observers on the limits of totality's path. Dr. Azahor was an astronomically inclined physician with his own observatory. In 1869, he was president of the Iowa Institute of Science and Arts. William Anderson, a former county surveyor and justice of peace, one W. Wormwood, and Hoare sat in the cupola of the local Civil War's orphan home on Eclipse Day, a fine perch from which to watch for the umbral edge. The building had just been completed that year. Photographs show it to have been a lovely piece of architecture. Alas, it burned down in 1965. The University of Northern Iowa's Student Union now sits atop its remains. The address of J.H. Stanley's jewelers, mentioned earlier, was a less successful stop. His reported observation outside of the shop leaves us a lot of available street and hence uncertainty. One can still find the small hill west of town, on top of which we can imagine eclipse observers pacing, awaiting the big event. At the time, it would have been accessible by horseback. Now it was surrounded by streets of a housing subdivision. Dempsey Overman and his brother John were among the founders of early Cedar Falls. Indeed, they named the town. D.C. Overman donated to every civic cause, the sort whose cities name parks after. In Cedar Falls, they named a park for him after Overman donated the land. Just 2.5 months before the total eclipse of the sun, he bought the lot for a new house 3 blocks from the one to be built 55 years later that would eventually become my home. From there, he, John, and another gentleman described as recently returned from Germany, observed and reported upon the solar eclipse. But where was the Overman house? It could only have just been built on 7 August 1869. The county auditing plats indicated to Fiala that the deed to the property on 12th Street had gone through many hands since. With my help, he narrowed its location to that on a large lot, the kind one would expect Overman to have procured. There he was confronted by an ill-tempered dog and a homeowner who said, "I advise you to not come any closer." Fiala took his GPS measurement from the safety of his car. Once Fiala departed, I took up the search independently. 17 years later, I determined that we were off by one address. Fiala had encountered his canine nemesis at the wrong house. I doubt that Fiala foresaw such adventures when he became a PhD astronomer. I may be wrong. His attempt to suss out time variation in the solar diameter established a null result within the precision of his measurements. A few years ago, I joined the country in celebrating the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, the first human landing on the moon made by Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. I found myself wondering, what would the astronomers and others who flocked to the August 1869 solar eclipse path have thought had they somehow learned that the celestial body casting the lunar shadow would be visited by men 1.5 centuries forward in time. Total eclipse expeditions, the subject of my book, were the 19th century's missions to the moon. Thanks, Jim.
All right, thank you. Hey, I was always thought it would be an excellent name for a band, Zone of Totality. So if anyone wants to form a band, I would recommend that one. Also, I realized I have this really good story to tell. I should have told it. So both of tonight's readers had contacted me independently to see about reading. I was wondering, I wonder if they actually know each other. And of course, how do you figure out if two people know each other? You go on Facebook, of course. So I go on Facebook. First thing that pops up is I forget whose page it was, but a picture of like 6 people, including the 2 of them in a hot tub together, having a beer. So I was like, okay, I think they know each other. This will work out. So all right. So tonight's next reader then, wait, I want to make sure I get the book title right. Give me a second here. Okay. Doug Shaw, who many of you here, he was a mathematician, but many of you might also know him from his work with improv over many years, but he's also the author of Social Nonsense, creative diversions for 2 or more players, and I think we might be playing anytime, anywhere. So I will turn things over to Doug.
So basically, no, this one, hello. Okay, so basically your 2 authors have seen each other's nipples. There you go. And some people are looking horrified, but you know, we all got it. We all got them. So there we are. Okay, yeah, so the original title of the book was Restaurant Improv, because I noticed I was starting to do these games when people were starting to take their phones out at restaurants. And I've been doing this for years. And so I compiled a bunch of creativity games that can be played between the time you order the food and the time it comes. And people said basically, well, this book doesn't have anything to do with restaurants or really improv. And I said, yeah, but I like it. And they said, yeah, but the title of the book should reflect the contents. And so I buckled under to peer pressure. But yeah, so everything in this book and everything we're going to do today was really designed for those little dead times. When you order the food, you wait for it to come. When you're online, when you're online not online, like you're waiting in a line to go somewhere, or car trips, things like that. And I think one of the greatest ways to know people is to create something new together. Now, here's where we bifurcate. When I'm talking to math audiences, I talk about the uses of creativity as far as brain stimulation and warm-ups for activities, blah, blah, blah. And when I'm talking to spiritual people, I ask this question, and I don't know you, so you're going to get the spiritual question, because that's the one that interests me. If a group of people create something that not a single person would have done by themselves, who is the author? The stupid answer is, well, everybody's the author, but it doesn't feel that way. And as you play creativity games, it doesn't feel like you did it together. It feels like something was doing it through you. And that's, you know, as a mathematician, I get uncomfortable when I talk like that. But that is really something subjective that happens. And I hope we tap into a little bit of that. Yeah, so when I used to do this as an hour presentation for libraries, I would talk for 15 minutes, then we'd play the games. And then I say, well, what did you think? And they said, we liked everything except the 15 minutes of you talking. So I'd go to 10, then go to 5. And basically people don't care what I have to say, they care about the game. So let's start. So we're gonna need, everybody who's playing needs an index card and something to write with. Oh, would you, Carolyn? Oh, that's awesome. So everybody gets an index card, and then if you don't have a pen, one will be provided. So I'll be on pen duty. In case you're wondering, I'm old and obese, so I have been vaccinated.
She wants a pen? Pen?
Extra?
Yes.
Okay. I think, yeah. Are these the extras?
Yes.
Okay.
I have that.
I guess so. Okay. All right.
Yes, I think I have extras. I know what I have.
So we're good. So this game is called Questions. In the trunk of my car at all times are index cards. Because if I'm at a restaurant with friends or we're going out, I'll pretend to go to the bathroom. I'll run to my car, get index cards, and get people to play this. Right? So on your index card, now don't let anybody else see, you're secretly going to write a question that begins with WHY, a why question. Anything you want, don't overthink it. If your eyebrows are touching now, you're overthinking it. Just WHY and then just some question. And I think the way we'll do this is I'll collect them. If it will help, this game was played by the Dadaists. The surrealists love this. You could hardly accuse them of overthinking their work. Now, I'm going to hand these out. What? I'm going to hand these back now. I'm going to hand them to you face down. So I don't want you to look at the question on the card. I'm handing it to you blank side up. So don't turn the card. So you're not going to look. Okay, now, without looking, on the back, and this is why I mentioned the surrealists love this game. On the back, write an answer. It does not have to be the answer to your question. Just write an answer. I know that's kind of strange. Just write an answer. You don't know what the question is, I don't care. Write an answer. Specific is better than general, but seriously, don't overthink it. That's why I feel bad I just gave you advice. I am nothing if not a bundle of contradictions. And I will grab them when you're ready. Perfect. Okay. Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right. So now, if we were not socially distanced, we would pass these out again and take turns reading them out loud. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be the reader. Why does Parmesan cheese taste better than it smells? Because you didn't listen to your mother the first time. Why do we only grow 2 sets of teeth? A Boeing 747. Why can't spring begin on time and stay warm? Because humans are killing off the bees. Okay, we can applaud that one. Why do chairs have 4 legs? 42. Why is the sky blue? Beer bread. That's actually where clouds come from. Why do dogs bark? Because they are designed to be that way. Why am I struggling to think? It's my way of communicating. Why do people sing in the shower? Because according to all known laws of aviation, bees shouldn't be able to fly. Their wings are too small to get their fat little bodies off the ground. Why does rain fall? Because there are some things that are better to be accepted than known.
Oh, yes.
And I'm not going to try to follow that. We're going to stop there. Okay. So what I like here is we have writing games, drawing games, and storytelling games. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to try a quick drawing game. Okay, so yeah. Yep. Now we don't have tables to draw on, so I'm going to ask that you use your thighs. And based on your muscle tone, you're going to either have a strong picture or a soft picture. Okay, so what you're going to draw is not, well, I'm going to tell you, but the main constraint is you're going to have exactly 60 seconds to draw it. If you are a very big artsy type, you're going to think 60 seconds is not enough. Tough, 60 seconds. If, like me, you're not an artsy type, you're going to be done in 30 seconds. I'm going to say keep drawing. So for people who are not artistic, the challenge is to keep drawing for 60 seconds. For people who are artistic, the challenge is to stop. Okay? What you're going to draw, and you're going to draw on the top left quadrant. You're only drawing on the top left fourth of the paper, and you're going to draw a party. Go. To start drawing a party. Just keep drawing. "30 seconds left. If you're finding yourself finished, add detail. "15 seconds left. And time. Okay. Now we're going to move the papers around. Do I have to collect them and repass them, or can we just do it? Okay. So give somebody else your paper. Just move them around. So everybody should have something new. Again, if you're at a restaurant, we would just be passing this. Yeah, go ahead. Switch. Move around. Yep. So does everybody have a new piece of paper? Okay. Top right quadrant. Okay. So on the top right corner, and if somebody screwed up, then you're just going to use a different corner. That's fine. Top right corner, you're going to copy that picture. But you only have 30 seconds. No, the picture that you're looking at now. You're copying somebody else's picture. 30 seconds, go. And stop. Okay. Switch papers again. Okay. Look at now in the bottom left corner of the paper, you're going to copy the top left corner. So look at the picture on the top left, you're going to copy it on the bottom left. You have 15 seconds. Don't start yet. Ready? I'm watching people get in. Go, 15 seconds. Stop. All right. Switch the papers around. Zoom people, I am so sorry. Okay. The remaining quadrant should be on the bottom right. You're going to copy the top left picture. You have 5 seconds. Ready? You're going to draw for 5 seconds. Copy the top left picture. Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Stop. Now, we're going to take some time to share the pictures, just like pass them around and look at them. But when you look at them, don't think of them as 4 separate pictures. The art is the whole thing as a complete whole. So think of this as a whole picture, the whole piece of paper, and take some time and take a look at them. So go ahead, you can get up and just show each other pictures. Is it possible to get all 3 mics up going at the same time?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll end with that, so we'll end up. Okay, and then we can certainly look at these more afterwards. I'm just looking at the watch right now, so I gotta. So let me get teachery for a second. Teachery for just a little second here. Do you notice that the 5-second drawings, a lot of them weren't bad? A lot of them weren't bad. Something to think about is how in 5 seconds, if you're not feeling inhibited and scared, if you're relaxed, you can do a lot in 5 seconds to convey meaning through pictures. Just a few lines evokes so much. Okay, so for our last thing, so we did a writing thing, a drawing thing. I want to do a storytelling thing, and it might be fun to get our hosts back. So if Jim and Tom can come up, and if we could get all the mics live, I'll demonstrate this next one. The storytelling games are nice because you can be in a car. I did not tell them ahead of time they were volunteering because I usually don't. I ask forgiveness, I don't ask permission. Okay, so are all our mics live?
Yeah, sure, we'll be good.
Tom, can you speak and be heard?
Can I speak and be heard?
Good, okay, we're gonna tell a story 1 word at a time, okay? That's what we're gonna do. It's just gonna be going around. I'll give you a couple of tips. First tip is don't try to be clever. Sometimes the next word in a sentence is and. You don't have to like be all clever, even though you're both smart. Second tip is sentences can end. A lot of times when a sentence is over, there's this instinct to say and. No, just start a new sentence. Okay? Don't try to screenwrite it. You can't plan ahead, not possible. Just kind of let it flow through you. Okay? And we're going to start right now. Once
There,
Was,
tiger,
who,
liked
meat,
and,
vegetables. New sentence.
on,
one,
Occasion
eat,
8,
and
avocado,
And
through
It's
up.
from
then
Or
now
he
died.
That's it. Now to get back to the thing I said earlier, who wrote the story? I'm not going to take responsibility. Are you guys? That story happened. You experienced it. And I like to think about who the author really was. So that's one word at a time story. And you can play that in the car on the way home. And the book is called Social Nonsense. You can buy it at the Hearst Center or out of the trunk of my car afterwards. I got some. And thank you very much.
All right. Well, we got a few minutes. If there are any questions, I think you might even be able to just put one on the chat on Zoom if you wanted to ask anybody anything. If you're wondering, like, what did we come up with? We'll have to show. Can you show some of the pictures on Zoom, maybe? I had nothing to do with the hot tub. I just saw the picture. They'll have to tell you about it. Sure, go ahead.
We agreed not to talk about.
Oh, no, that's all right. What happens in the hot tub stays in the hot tub. I think that was the kind of general understanding. All right, we do have a real question.
and I didn't even plant that question. Honest, I didn't.
Wait, Tom
Yeah.
had a book. Wait, you got to say it at the
The
microphone.
book I read from is forthcoming to come out in next year. However, if right now you just have to have a book written by somebody who has been in Cedar Falls since Pink Floyd played the Dome, you can go to Amazon and find Jupiter from Reaction Press. It's got some, it's a former art house that did this, so at least you're guaranteed some pretty pictures.
I'll hold this one out. Flash Fiction by Jim O'Loughlin.
Also available, my book at fine booksellers everywhere. All right.
Mine is called Social
And-
Nonsense.
Yes, Doug's called Social Nonsense. So there you go. 2 guys, 3 books. Hey, I think there was a question. I'm not sure if it was an intentional question or not, but there were some questions, Doug, and I know you've done some stuff with this. What kind of games can be done on Zoom?
So most of these games can be done as on Zoom, and I thought of creating a Zoom edition and marketing it, and then I decided not to. But yes, these games are all Zoom adaptable, especially the storytelling ones and the writing ones. The drawing ones are a little more difficult because you can't pass the paper around, but it's not impossible.
All right. It's always a good night when everybody gets a question, and everyone got a question. So I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Hey, we will be back here in August. Brooke Wonders, who has not been in town for a year and a half, is going to be back in town. She'll be doing the first reading of the season, probably out here, maybe inside. Nobody knows what the world looks like in August. Maybe we'll be on a satellite somewhere. Who knows at this point in time? But anyway, thank you for coming out tonight. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Thanks to both readers tonight.